A tense moment at a global charity gala. Jimin refuses Jungkook's hand in front of the world. What really happened behind that split-second gesture? Don't, Jimin said under his breath, barely moving his lips, but it was enough. Jungkook's hand hung in the air, exposed, trembling slightly. The ballroom froze. No music, no camera flashes, just silence razor-sharp and suffocating. Jimin's fingers stayed rigid by his side, his expression unreadable. Dressed in an all-white silk suit under the glow of crystalline chandeliers, he looked like a vision sculpted from snow cold, still, perfect. And yet, to those who truly knew him, the tightness around his eyes told a different story. His heart was a war zone. Across from him, Jungkook slowly lowered his hand. The corners of his lips curled upward in a trained, gentle smile. Too gentle. The kind of smile that screamed everything was fine when nothing was. The gala, held in a glass-walled rooftop hall overlooking the Seoul skyline, had been meant to be a symbol. BTS had been invited as honorary guests for their consistent global charity work. Cameras lined every edge of the marble stage, live broadcasting to millions. And yet, all it took was one Jimin refusal for the world to question everything. The host, flustered, tried to shift attention. The screen behind them displayed the children they were raising funds for. But no one was watching the screen. They were watching the gap 10 inches of air between Jimin's side and Jungkook's lowered hand. That 10 inches was now a chasm. Taehyung, standing 2 steps behind them, blinked slowly. His jaw clenched, his fingers twitching at his side. RM subtly turned his head, whispering something behind his teeth. Staff off stage were already in disarray, signaling at each other, unsure whether to cut the feed. But the feed kept rolling, and fans were already clipping. The internet would explode within the hour. But in this moment, this exact heartbeat in time, Jungkook's world shrunk into the space between his hand and Jimin's. He should have seen it coming. 2 nights before, the tension had already begun to brew. Jungkook had arrived at Jimin's apartment unannounced. Rain fell in sheets across the city, drumming like war drums on his umbrella. When Jimin opened the door, he didn't move aside to let him in. "I asked for space," Jimin said. His voice was flat, his expression distant. "I didn't come to fight," Jungkook replied. "I came to fix it." Lightning lit the hallway behind him. For a split second, Jimin's face was illuminated, eyes red, jaw tight, fingers clenched behind the door. "You can't fix something you keep breaking," Jimin said, and then walked back inside, leaving the door wide open. Jungkook followed silently. The apartment smelled like bergamot and cold tea. Piles of unopened fan letters sat untouched on the table. The television buzzed in the background with a paused documentary about war survivors, something Jimin watched when he couldn't sleep. "You think just because we're on stage together, everything's still the same?" Jimin muttered, grabbing a towel and throwing it on the couch. "But it's not." "Then tell me what I did," Jungkook demanded, eyes burning. "Just say it. I'd rather be hated for the truth than punished for something I don't understand." Jimin turned slowly. His voice was low, each word cut with ice. "You're not clueless. You just don't like what the answer might be." A long silence. "Then, you chose her over me," he said. And there it was, the accusation that neither of them had dared say out loud until now. Jungkook's breath caught. He stepped forward instinctively, hand outstretched, but Jimin flinched. That same motion, that same rejection. Jungkook withdrew his hand and looked down. "It wasn't like that." "It always is," Jimin replied, softer now. "You protect your secrets. You call it privacy, but it makes everything feel like a lie." "Is this about the stylist, the rehearsals, the way she—" "It's about you letting someone stand between us, again." Back at the gala, Jungkook stood still as the host nervously redirected the audience's attention. "And now," she announced, her voice trembling slightly, "Jimin and Jungkook will present the donation check together." The spotlight shifted. Jungkook moved toward the podium. Jimin followed a beat later. They stood side by side, but their hands never touched. Every movement was rehearsed, but none of it felt real. The audience saw professionalism, but fans saw the fracture. Underneath the polished smiles, their eyes never met. Beneath the surface, something had shattered. Later that night, footage from 3 different fan angles went viral. One had zoomed in on Jimin's lips as he whispered, "Don't." Another had captured Taehyung's glance at the moment. And Onra and Blurry had caught the second Jungkook turned his head slightly toward Jimin and muttered, barely audible over the applause, "I wish you just held on." It was enough to send the internet into chaos. After the gala, Jimin disappeared. He canceled his interview, left through the service entrance, his phone went off, messages left unread, calls ignored. He turned off notifications and walked the Han River Bridge alone until dawn, his face hidden under a hood, earbuds in, a single piano melody looping on repeat. Jungkook, meanwhile, stayed at the event far longer than he needed to. He smiled, took photos, shook hands, but his eyes kept drifting toward the empty seat next to his. When he finally returned to his apartment, he stood in front of his mirror for a long time. Then, without a word, he peeled off his blazer, removed the white gold ring from his right finger, the one that matched Jimin's. He placed it carefully inside a small velvet box and closed the lid. Rain poured hard against the window panes as Jungkook sat alone in his darkened living room. The velvet box sat untouched on the table in front of him like a coffin for everything that used to be sacred. The ring inside gleamed faintly under the dim light of a corner lamp mocking him. It seemed like a reflection of what he had lost and never dared to name. He hadn't slept. The gala had ended almost 10 hours ago, but the clip of Jimin refusing his hand had already reached tens of millions of views. The hashtags were trending across every continent. Fan theories swarmed like hornets. Some were sympathetic, some venomous, and some painfully accurate. Why didn't he just take his hand? Did something happen between them? There's no way this wasn't intentional. I saw Taehyung's reaction. He knew. Jungkook's thumb hovered over his phone screen as another message from RM flashed across the top. You need to talk to him before this goes deeper. But Jungkook didn't move. His mind was locked on the last time Jimin had worn that matching ring, the one he now refused to be seen with. It was during their Tokyo fan meet, only 2 months earlier. The night after that performance, Jimin had quietly slipped his hand into Jungkook's backstage as the crowd screamed outside. No cameras, no media, just them. Promise me, Jimin had whispered, eyes clouded with something deeper than affection, that no matter what happens, you'll stay real with me. And Jungkook had promised. Foolishly. Blindly. That was before the stylist incident, before the private meeting leaked, before someone started feeding tabloids with twisted truths, before Jimin saw the photos and worse believed them. A sudden knock at the door yanked Jungkook out of his spiral. His chest tightened. He stood slowly, the floor creaking beneath his bare feet, and opened the door to find Taehyung. He didn't speak at first, just stared, rain dripping from his hair, dark strands clinging to his forehead like ink strokes on a forgotten page. His eyes searched Jungkook's face, calm, piercing, unreadable. Let me in, Taehyung finally said, voice low, restrained. Jungkook stepped aside. They sat in silence for a few minutes. Taehyung didn't even take off his wet coat. The air between them felt loaded, like a minefield neither of them wanted to trigger. Until Taehyung leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, and spoke in a tone Jungkook hadn't heard in years. You broke him. The words cut deeper than they should have. Jungkook didn't flinch, but inside, something cracked. He poured 2 glasses of water, handed one to Taehyung, and sat down across from him. I didn't cheat, Jungkook said flatly. I didn't say you did, Taehyung snapped. But you let someone get in his head, and you let his silence grow until it became a wall you couldn't climb. You think I wanted this? I think you stopped fighting for him the moment it got inconvenient. Jungkook's jaw tightened. Don't lecture me on loyalty, Taehyung. You've been quiet since this started. Where the hell were you when he needed someone to tell him the truth? I was there, Taehyung hissed, but he stopped listening when the person he trusted most gave him reasons not to. Jungkook looked down. I didn't touch her. I didn't say anything inappropriate. But I didn't stop the rumors either. I thought ignoring it would make it die. Taehyung scoffed bitterly. You thought silence was strength? Jimin sees silence as betrayal. The room fell silent again. The rain now sounded like 1,000 fingertips tapping the glass impatient. Urgent. Then, in a voice barely audible, Taehyung added, he cried last night. First time in months. Not during the fight, not during the gala, after, when he was alone. Jungkook's eyes burned. He stood abruptly, knocking the chair back slightly. Why are you here, Taehyung? Because if you don't fix this now, you'll lose him for good. Maybe I already have. No, Taehyung said with a steel tone, but if you don't move, she will. Jungkook froze. She? He echoed. Taehyung, didn't elaborate, but the implication was clear. Someone had filled the silence. Whether emotionally or worse, he didn't say, but it was enough to light a fire in Jungkook's chest. He grabbed his keys. Where is he? Jimin stood at the foot of his mother's garden, hood pulled over his head, sleeves damp from watering the late-blooming roses. His mother had watched him wordlessly for hours, letting him dig through the wet earth like a man trying to bury the past. She knew better than to ask. She simply brought him warm tea and let him be. When Jungkook showed up, Jimin saw him from a distance, but he didn't stop pruning the vines. Why are you here? Jimin asked without turning. I need you to look at me. Silence. Jungkook walked closer, careful not to step on the flower beds. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, misting the air between them. I don't care what the fans think. I don't care what they said I did. I care that you believe them more than you believe me. Jimin clipped a dead leaf. It's not that I believe them. It's that you didn't fight them. I didn't know how. That's not good enough anymore. Jungkook stepped forward until only a breath of air separated them. Then tell me what to do. Tell me how to prove it. Jimin looked up slowly. His eyes, red-rimmed and hollow, met Jungkook's. Let me go. Jungkook's breath hitched. No, he whispered. I won't. Jimin stepped back. You already did. And just like that, he walked inside. Jungkook stood there, in the middle of the damp garden, hands clenched, lips trembling. A moment later, Jimin's mother stepped outside. She didn't speak. She simply handed him the velvet boxes box, the one she had found in Jimin's drawer that morning. Don't wait too long, she said softly. Some wounds don't wait to scar. Jungkook stared at the box. Then he turned and left. That night, the news exploded again. Jimin unfollowed Jungkook on Instagram. Fans lost their minds. Conspiracy theories lit up every forum. Agencies declined to comment. Hybe remained eerily silent. Media outlets asked if the group was fracturing again. Fan accounts reposted every old memory between the two side-by-side stage smiles, accidental touches, midnight V-lives, all now recontextualized as past tense. But the next day, something strange happened. Jungkook posted a letter. Handwritten. No statement, no branding. Just a raw, messy, ink-stained letter addressed to no one and yet, obviously, to one. It read, I kept the silence because I thought it was safer. I kept my distance because I thought you'd come back on your own. I was wrong. I broke us by trying to protect us. If you're reading this, I don't need your forgiveness. I just need you to remember who we were before the world started watching. And if that version of you still exists, I'll be waiting. The world stood still. Armies cried. Even Jimin, when he read it, felt his knees weaken. But he didn't respond. Not publicly, not yet. Instead, he opened his drawer, pulled out a torn photograph of a beach day from 3 years ago, and stared at the moment Jungkook had grabbed his hand without hesitation. The only difference now was the hesitation, and the fear that maybe they were no longer the same people in that photograph. Not anymore. Not ever again. You weren't supposed to hear this. Those were the first words in the leaked audio that brought the entire K-pop industry to a halt. The file was only 64 seconds long, raw, breathy, and spoken in Jimin's unmistakable voice low, trembling, painfully intimate. It wasn't posted by Jimin, it wasn't shared by Hybe, and yet, within minutes of surfacing online, it was everywhere. In the clip, Jimin's voice broke halfway through a confession that had never been meant for the world. I miss you, he said, but I'm scared of you too. The silence that followed that sentence was deafening. Twitter imploded. TikTok was drowning in lip-reading analyses and slow-motion edits of every past interaction between him and Jungkook. Some fans cried. Some demanded accountability. Others simply sat in stunned disbelief, whispering to themselves, how did we get here? Jungkook heard the clip before the rest of the world. His phone buzzed at dawn, vibrating against the edge of his desk. He was seated alone in his studio, staring at the monitor, which displayed a half-finished demo file he hadn't been able to complete for days. His creative block had solidified into something concrete, like dried cement around his throat. The note that woke him was from an unverified number. It simply read, play this before it's too late. A link followed. Jungkook clicked, and everything inside him fell apart. He hadn't heard Jimin speak like that since the night they stood at the rooftop of Hybe's old dorm in 2021 after their first world tour. That night, Jimin had clutched the railing with white knuckles, wind howling around them, and whispered, "Promise me we'll never let all this change us." Jungkook had wrapped his arms around him from behind and answered, "We'll protect this, I swear." But promises don't always survive the weight of fame. As the clip ended, Jungkook sat frozen. His breath shallowed. He played it again and again, until his vision blurred, until he knew every crack in Jimin's voice by heart. Jimin's "I miss you" didn't sound like nostalgia. It sounded like a scream no one had answered. An hour later, Jungkook was at the front door of Hybe's legal department, demanding an emergency briefing. "Tell me who leaked that audio," he said, slamming his fist on the polished table. The lead counsel, Mr. Han, removed his glasses slowly. "It wasn't internal," he replied. "The metadata is scrubbed. This was deliberate, professional." Jungkook narrowed his eyes. "So someone hacked him?" "Possibly. Or someone close to him betrayed him." The word betrayed rang louder than expected. Jungkook's jaw clenched. His voice dropped. "Who had access?" Mr. Han hesitated. "Other than staff, only one person fits the timeline." "Say it." Mr. Han didn't blink. "Yuna." Silence. The name felt like a match to gasoline. Yuna, the new PR consultant, the same one who had been assigned to BTS 3 months earlier, the one who had coordinated the gala event, the one who had quietly grown closer to Jungkook during press conferences and late-night scheduling crises. The one fan speculated about the same woman whose photograph beside Jungkook had gone viral, and who Jimin had seen exiting Jungkook's apartment late one night. Jungkook had always told himself it was professional, she was helpful, smart, empathetic, but she had also smiled too long when Jimin was mentioned, and she had once said, "You shouldn't always carry the weight of his silence." Now, that silence had become her weapon. Jungkook left the room without another word. Meanwhile, Jimin sat in his small music room in Daegu, away from Seoul, away from the cameras, away from everyone. He hadn't spoken since the leak. Not publicly, not to Hybe, not even to Taehyung. He had disappeared from group chats, ignored calls, closed curtains. The only people who saw him were his father, who said nothing but brewed tea every morning, and his dog Bomi, who never left his side. He hadn't meant to record that message. It was meant to be a private journal entry, something he'd been doing since therapy began 2 years ago. His psychologist had recommended it. Record your thoughts, let them out, even if no one listens. But someone had listened, and now, so had the world. Jimin scrolled through the chaos on his phone. Hundreds of thousands of comments flooded his account. Some called him brave, some called him manipulative, some demanded answers. Some wrote essays defending Jungkook, others called Jimin a victim. Some accused him of orchestrating it all. But the only comment that stuck out was a DM, short, sent by Jungkook. "Please, meet me. I know the truth now." Jimin stared at it. His thumb hovered. Then he turned off the phone. He wasn't ready. Not yet. The pain was still too fresh, too raw. It wasn't just the betrayal of the audio. It was the betrayal of trust, of closeness, of the unspoken bond they'd built brick by brick over the years. Jungkook had let someone else into that space, and Jimin couldn't tell where the mistake ended and the truth began. Meanwhile, the media frenzy escalated. Dispatch released new footage. Grainy but real security cam footage from the Hybe garage showing Yuna entering Jungkook's car 2 nights before the gala. Fans gasped. Comment sections turned radioactive. Some defended her, saying she was an employee. Others dissected body language, claiming she had leaned too close. A few slowed the video down to highlight Jungkook's hand on her shoulder, innocent to some, damning to others. Hybe issued a statement. "The leaked audio was obtained without consent and is being investigated. We request respect for the artist's privacy." It did nothing. The fire was too big. And then another leak. This time, it wasn't audio. It was a video, a personal vlog never meant for public eyes. It showed Jimin in his hotel room 2 weeks prior, speaking to the camera. His voice was soft, tired, candid. "I don't know who he is around her," he whispered. "He laughs, but it's not the same laugh. He avoids my eyes. He hides his phone. And I keep telling myself I'm not jealous, but I am. I'm so scared that one day I'll reach for his hand and it'll be empty." The final line echoed. Fans cried. Critics speculated. Hype scrambled. And Jungkook, who watched it alone in his studio at 3:41 a.m., felt the breath leave his lungs. He texted again. I never stopped waiting for you. Please, let me in. This time, Jimin replied, tomorrow, Ost PM, our spot. Jungkook knew what that meant. The rooftop, where it had all begun. At 8:00 sharp, Jungkook stood under the stars, wind tousling his hair, the city glowing below. He held the velvet box in his palm, the ring still inside, untouched. At 8:03, Jimin arrived. No cameras, no stylists, just him, in a black hoodie and worn sneakers, hair swept back, eyes guarded. They didn't speak for a full minute. Then Jimin stepped forward. His voice was steady, but his fingers trembled. Did you love her? No, Jungkook said without hesitation. Did you lie to me? Only when I told you I wasn't hurting. Jimin exhaled. The wind howled. I'm tired of bleeding in public, he whispered. I'm tired of always wondering who you're with when I'm not around, of being strong when I want to scream. Jungkook stepped closer, then scream. And Jimin did. He yelled, he cursed. He threw his fist against Jungkook's chest and sobbed into his hoodie, shattering years of buried emotion. Jungkook didn't flinch. He just held him, quietly, steadily, like a dam finally bursting. When the sobs faded, Jimin looked up, eyes wet and red. I don't know if we can go back. Jungkook opened the velvet box. Then, let's build something new. He held out the ring not as a symbol of romance or friendship or anything boxed in by labels, but as a promise of truth, of beginning again, with open hands. Jimin didn't take it, but he didn't walk away either. And maybe for now, that was enough. You both need to hear the truth, Taehyung said, his voice rough, heavy, trembling beneath years of restraint, and you're not going to like it. It was 2 days after the rooftop meeting. Jimin sat stiffly on the far end of the practice room, knees pulled to his chest, hoodie sleeves tugged halfway over his hands. His eyes were low, not avoiding, but bracing for something. Jungkook stood near the mirror, pacing, his jaw clenching with every step. The air smelled of old sweat and wood polish, lights buzzing faintly overhead. The door was locked. No staff, no cameras, no backup. Just the three of them in that cold, familiar room where so many beginnings had been born, and where one fracture had finally come to light. Taehyung leaned against the piano, arms folded, head bowed slightly, as if waiting for his own voice to betray him. He hadn't wanted to be here. Not like this. But the fallout had reached a level where silence was no longer an act of protection, it had become complicity. Start talking, Jungkook said flatly. Taehyung's eyes flicked up. You think this all started with Yuna? He said. It didn't. It started with something I saw a long time ago, something I thought didn't matter, but I was wrong. Jimin blinked. His voice cracked for the first time since arriving. You saw what? Taehyung looked directly at Jungkook. You remember Osaka? That night after the awards show? Jungkook's brow furrowed. Barely. We all went out. You and Hobie disappeared early. I didn't disappear, Taehyung said bitterly. I came back, quietly, and I saw you on the phone, alone, in the hallway behind the green room. You were different, soft, and I thought maybe it was your mom or your brother. But then you said something. He paused. Both Jimin and Jungkook stared. You said, I need more time. He can't know yet. The silence that followed made Jimin's skin prickle. He turned his gaze to Jungkook, but Jungkook was frozen. I thought maybe I misunderstood, Taehyung continued. But then a week later, that woman started appearing. At rehearsals, at fittings. You said she was part of Hybe's new branding team, but I saw how she looked at you. Stop, Jungkook whispered. I saw how you looked at her, Taehyung snapped. And I kept my mouth shut because I thought, maybe it's nothing. Maybe I'm overthinking. But Jimin noticed too, and when he asked, you shut him out. Jimin stood now, slowly. You lead. I didn't lie, Jungkook muttered. You withheld, Jimin corrected, voice sharp. Taehyung stepped forward, tone softer now. Jimin started second-guessing everything. Every look, every laugh, every moment you were late, he thought she was with you, and you never gave him a reason not to think that. Jungkook looked at Jimin, desperation creeping into his features. She wasn't, he started. Jimin held up a hand. Don't. If you're about to say she wasn't important, remember who made her important. You did, not me. I thought I was protecting you, Jungkook snapped. From gossip, from this, from seeing things that weren't real. But they became real, Jimin said, because you let the distance grow. Taehyung watched them both, breathing shallow. And then the audio leaked. The video followed, and the floodgates opened. Jungkook turned toward him. You could have said something earlier. You knew he was suffering. I did say something, Taehyung hissed. Just not to you. Jimin's eyes widened. What? Taehyung hesitated. And then he said it. I told Yoona to back off. Jungkook's fist tightened. You what? I saw how far it was going. How she was twisting your silence into poison. How she fed Jimin's insecurities like it was her job. Jimin blinked hard. You never told me that. Because I didn't want to make it worse, Taehyung muttered. I thought I could handle it, that she'd take the hint. But she didn't, Jungkook whispered. No, she got worse. Jimin sat down again slowly, his shoulders hunched. So, she wanted us to fracture. She saw the cracks and turned them into trenches, Taehyung said. And I let her, Jungkook murmured. They sat in silence for a long time. Then, Taehyung walked over to the center of the room and sat down cross-legged, just like they used to during trainee days when they had nothing but aching limbs and endless dreams. I'm tired of watching you two destroy each other, he said. You think you're hurting alone, but you've dragged the whole group into your shadow. We tiptoe around every room. We pause every time one of you enters. We rehearse with silence because we don't know what will explode next. And the fans? They see it. They feel it. They're not stupid. Jungkook looked away. Jimin ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. I didn't mean to drag everyone down. But you did, Taehyung said. And so did he. Jungkook stood. So what? What now? We just say sorry and pretend it didn't happen? No, Jimin said, rising as well. We acknowledge it. Fully. Honestly. No more secrets. No more protection. Jungkook looked at him, voice shaking. Are you ready for that? Jimin's eyes didn't waver. I need it. Taehyung stood. Then start here. Now. Say it. The one thing neither of you have said out loud. The room went still. Jimin turned to Jungkook. I loved you. Jungkook's breath caught. I still might, Jimin added. But I don't know who you are anymore. Jungkook stepped forward, slowly, until he was standing only inches from Jimin. His voice was hoarse, his eyes wet. I never stopped loving you. I just didn't know how to love you and survive this machine at the same time. Taehyung closed his eyes. For once, it wasn't out of frustration. It was relief. That finally, they had stopped dancing around the wound and put their hands directly on it. And yet the pain still lingered. Because confessions don't erase damage. They only name it. That night, a photo surfaced on social media blurry, grainy, taken by someone in the shadows. It showed three figures walking out of Hybe's back entrance. Jimin, Jungkook, Taehyung. No bodyguards, no entourage, just three boys walking side by side in silence. It was posted without a caption. None was needed. Army knew. Something had shifted. But it was only the beginning. Should we really do this? Jimin whispered, the mic in his hand trembling just slightly, his reflection flickering in the dark glass of the camera in front of him. Jungkook's voice was calm, but low and deliberate. If we don't speak now, they'll keep filling the silence for us. The studio was dimly lit, not by design, but by mood. They had requested a closed set, no stylists, no managers, no script, just one camera, one operator, and the two of them seated side by side at a narrow table with black mugs in front of them and raw silence hanging like a blade between breaths. Hybe hadn't approved the broadcast. In fact, they hadn't even known about it until the countdown began on Weverse Live. Jimin, Jungkook live, no edits, no filters. The moment the notification dropped, chaos ignited. Viewers flooded in by the tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Within 10 minutes, the count was already over 2 million. When the feed finally turned on, there was no music, no intro, just the two of them in frame, seated in what looked like a confession booth disguised as a studio. Jimin stared at the camera. Jungkook exhaled slowly. Then Jimin spoke first. If you're watching this, You probably already know what this is about. His voice was even, but it held the wear of sleepless nights and unspoken wounds. He looked over at Jungkook for a moment, just briefly, before turning back. I thought silence would protect me. I thought that staying quiet was the mature thing to do, that hiding how I felt would keep the peace. A pause. The live chat was scrolling too fast to read, but the sheer speed said enough. It didn't. Jungkook took over, his voice softer than fans had heard in years. We didn't plan this. Not really. We've just been watching people say things about us for weeks. About our friendship, about our silence, about our mistakes, and we kept letting them because we thought we didn't owe anyone the truth. He leaned forward slightly, but maybe we owe it to ourselves. Jimin looked down at his hands. What you saw at the gala wasn't a performance. It was real and raw and maybe humiliating, but I wasn't trying to make a scene. I was trying not to break down in front of the world.